Welcome back, everyone, to the UK now, where retail sales slumped by the most in nearly 3 years. It happened last month. Sale volumes increased by nearly 3.5% from December, much stronger than predicted. Still, it was also reported on Thursday that the UK slipped into a technical recession in the final 3 months of 2023. Yolo Abdafid reports.
There's been a surge in retail sales in the British economy. Against expectations, UK retail sales are up, despite talks of recession, inflation, and concerns about the rising cost of food and energy. A 3.4 increase in retail sales in January suggests the economy is recovering. Britain hasn't seen this kind of a bounce back since April 2021 during the COVID pandemic. Now, these January sales compensate for a big fall in the key Christmas shopping month of December in Britain, when there was a 3.3% fall that was recorded by the Office for National Statistics in Britain. And January discounts helped household shops, department stores, sports shops to achieve a robust trade, according to the ONS. So looking at what was selling, well, all retail sectors grew except for clothing. The biggest contribution to the growth was in supermarkets and food, and that is odd in a way, so soon after Christmas. And also, there was a big rise in fuel sales, an increase of 5.4% in January, with motorists taking advantage of a fall in fuel prices. It's worth remembering, though, that the sales are still 1.3% below the pre-pandemic level of February 2020. Now, why is this important? Well, because a strong pickup in sales suggests the worst could be behind the retail sector, and hopes for inflation to fall and rising wages in 2024, it will provide a stronger platform for recovery. Some economists, though, still warn that households will still feel the pain of a cost of living crisis, and mortgage interest rates are going up this year. Now, on Thursday this week, we were talking about a UK recession, or a technical recession. We reported how the UK's GDP fell by 0.3% during October to December last year, and the previous quarter they fell 0.1%. The biggest contributors to the GDP fall was in manufacturing, in construction, and the wholesale sectors. But despite 2 drops in GDP in the past 6 months, in the UK, the economy did grow by a very, very small 0.1% across the whole of the year. A case of flatlining, but still giving people some optimism. Yolo Abdafid, CGTN, London.
Okay, let's talk more about the UK economy and its recession. We're joined by Klisman Murati. He is the founder of Pareto Economics, a global world affairs research consultancy and the creator of Global Power Index. Klisman, thanks very much. I want to kind of get right to it, because we've talked the last few days about a technical recession, and here in the United States, everybody's trying to read the tea leaves month to month about the economic figures to see if that could have influence on the Fed in lowering interest rates that have basically been punishing for the last year and a half. Tell us about your reaction to the latest economic figures and what a technical recession is.
Well, technical recession essentially is negative growth over 2 quarters. That's the technical definition of it. So that may mean things to some people, but for economists, that's something which is something that they watch closely, because it's an indication of at least ex post or retroactively GDP growth, right? This matters for 3 main reasons, I think, Sean. Firstly, politically, Sunak is not liking these numbers because he's now in an election year where he needs to prove himself to the populace, not by reducing taxes, but by also seeing growth in the economy. Again, the central bank of England is looking at this to determine strategy, but I think most importantly, this is going to have a dampening effect on consumer and business sentiment, which is what essentially drives the economy. If businesses and households think the future will be better, then they will spend more money and they'll invest more money into the economy. Given these numbers which came out now, I don't think that's a good sign.
Interesting, because obviously that momentum, just that mental preparedness for if your economy is doing good or bad, even by a fraction, it has such a big influence. What does that say right now about the state of the country's economy?
Well, look, we need to take a much more longer-term view on this. I know we are focusing on the last 2 quarters, but we need to look at the economy holistically. And what we see holistically is that since 2008, the UK GDP figures haven't stayed on trend as they were pre-2008, so pre-global financial crisis. and they've fallen even further away from what the trend line would have been post-COVID. So no matter if the UK economy didn't go into recession in the last quarter, if it wasn't declared a technical recession, we are still nowhere near the previous trend line of 2008, and even falling back even further from COVID. So this is a part of history where I think the UK is going to find it hard to return to any kind of trend line, which will boost business and also boost consumer sentiment.
Yeah, it sounds like it's kind of grim information. I mean, it's a wonderful forensic account of how it got there from 2008 to 2024. So what are some of the biggest challenges right now?
Well, the economy, again, is made up of many different factors, and both the central bank and the government have different roles in which they can play. I suppose central banks are much more restricted. Central government has a much more wider grip on things. So we have, again, issues in relation to the effects of Brexit, which are still going on. We have, again, negative consumer sentiment, which I can't stress enough how important it is, because this is what drives the economy. We have issues in relation to geopolitics globally, which are impacting, again, supply chains, which are, again, hitting on the price of goods into the UK. We have migration issues in the UK, which are still yet to be sorted, and a bunch of other things too.
You know, you've talked about all of these things, but when you do look at it holistically, let's talk about some of the bright spots. There certainly must be something out there performing well to keep the economy chugging along at only a small fraction of a dip.
Well, look, again, it's not all doom and gloom. Again, if you're looking at it at very short-term time cycles, then you can be very selective as to what you promote as being positive or negative, of course. Now, I think households are looking at where they can save money and where they need to spend money. Some place where they need to spend money is obviously groceries. That's what we've seen a big boost in, no matter what people need to eat. What they're saving money on are probably externalities which they don't need to spend that much money on. We spoke about clothing post-Christmas, and I think houses are looking now at where they should be putting their money, planning again for the long term, and realizing that, again, the cost of living crisis is still going on, despite some positives
Yeah, we're struggling to hear you just a bit. Let me take one more stab at it. What do you think it's going to take to get back on track? Because it sounds like what you're talking about is discretionary income, and right now maybe it's better not to go out and splurge coming out of the holidays, knowing that you're in for a roller coaster ride ahead.
Look, it depends on what you compare this time period to, because the relative comparisons are very important. If you're looking at it, if you're looking at GDP growth from pre-2008 to now, we're seeing a big divergence in terms of expectations, right? Because what we expected pre-2008 was on trend. After 2008, it's been very, very different. So it depends on the timelines you're looking at to make some sort of analysis as to what the economy needs. But certainly we need more growth. We need to be able to have confidence in our spending and in business growth, and that's going to take a number of measures, both through central banks and government, to make these things happen.